I first saw him standing at the edge of the maize field just before the sun dipped behind the hills. At first, I thought it was one of the men from the neighboring village, but the longer I stared, the more I felt something wasn't right. His body was too still. Not the stillness of someone resting, but the stillness of someone waiting. He was tall, much taller than any man I knew. His head was wrapped in a dirty red cloth, and he wore a long brown coat that reached his ankles. But his feet, they were bare. The ground was full of dry stalks and sharp stones, yet he stood there without moving, without flinching. I was carrying water from the river when I saw him. I didn't want to stop and stare, but my feet slowed on their own. It was like the air between us had gone heavy. I looked around, hoping someone else had seen him, but the path back to the village was empty. The only sound was the wind moving through the dry maize leaves. Then he lifted his hand. It wasn't a wave. It was just a slow, heavy raise of his arm, like he was pointing at me, or calling me. My stomach turned cold. I gripped the handle of my water pot and hurried down the path. I told myself not to look back, but I did. He was gone. That night, as I sat outside my mother's hut, the elders were telling stories. Children sat close to the fire, their eyes wide, as Baba Simu spoke about the Ekivulu, spirits that wander between villages at dusk. They don't knock on your door, he said. They stand outside and wait for you to notice them. If you follow them, you don't come back. I almost told them what I had seen, but something inside me said to keep quiet. The next day, I was at the river again when I saw the same man, same red cloth, same coat. This time he was standing on the opposite bank, half hidden by reeds. I froze. My first thought was to run. My second thought was, how did he get there? That part of the river had no bridge. The water there was deep and strong, and no one crossed it except at the shallow bend far downstream. He raised his arm again, slow and deliberate. This time I dropped the pot and ran before he could lower it. That evening, something strange happened. A girl from the next compound over didn't come home. Her name was Nali. She was 14, the same age as my younger sister. People said she had gone to the river to fetch water and never returned. By morning, her mother was screaming so loud the whole village gathered. They found Nali's pot sitting upright on the riverbank, not broken, not spilled, just sitting there like she had put it down carefully. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. Not yet. The third time I saw him, it was worse. The sun had just begun to set, and I was helping my mother in the garden. I felt it before I saw it, that strange, heavy air, like the world had stopped breathing. When I looked up, he was standing at the edge of our compound. Not in the fields, not across the river, here. The red cloth on his head was tighter now. I could see his face more clearly. His skin was pale, not the pale of a sick man, but pale like clay. His eyes looked empty. Not white, not black. Just empty, like someone had scooped them out and left shadows in their place. And then I noticed something that made my hands go cold. His coat. It was wet from the hem up to the knees, like he had been walking in deep water. I stepped back, my hands gripping the hose so tight my fingers hurt. "Mother," I whispered, without taking my eyes off the man. She looked up from the cassava roots she was pulling and froze. For a moment, she didn't say a word. Then she spat on the ground. That's what people do here when they feel something evil is watching. But the man didn't move. "Get inside," my mother said. Her voice was low but sharp. "Now." I obeyed. I moved quickly toward the hut, but I kept glancing over my shoulder. Each time I expected him to be closer, but no, he was still standing exactly where he had been, as still as a termite mound. By the time my mother joined me inside, she was breathing hard. She didn't light the lamp. We sat in the dark, listening. There were no footsteps, no voices, just that strange quiet that made my skin crawl. Finally, she said, "Don't tell anyone." Not yet. I wanted to ask why, but something in her tone stopped me. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined waking to see him standing in the doorway. In the morning, I went to the well instead of the river. But when I got there, I heard women talking in low voices. One of them, Auntie Rano, was saying that another person had gone missing, a young man named Caleb, who had been hunting near the river the night before. "He left his spear by the water," she whispered. "Just standing there, no footprints away from it." The women fell silent when they saw me. I could feel their eyes on me as I filled my bucket. By midday, the elders called a meeting under the big fig tree. Everyone gathered, even the children. Baba Simu, who was the oldest in the village, stood leaning on his stick. "This is not the first time," he said. "It happened when I was a boy. A tall stranger came at sundown. People who looked at him too long disappeared." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "He does not speak," Baba Simu went on. "He does not knock. He waits until you notice him. Then he follows you, in your dreams, in your shadow, until you belong to him." My stomach twisted. One of the younger men, Lombe, laughed nervously. "You believe in ghost stories, old man?" Baba Simu's eyes narrowed. "Laugh if you want, but before the moon is full, you will see for yourself." The elders decided to perform a protection ritual that evening. Everyone was to stay indoors at sundown. No one was to look outside, no matter what they heard. When the sun began to sink, my mother placed a line of white ash across our doorway and muttered words I didn't understand. We sat in silence, the room dim except for the small flame in the corner. I could hear the faint chanting of the elders somewhere outside, mixed with the soft rustle of wind in the trees. Then the wind stopped. It wasn't gradual. It was like someone had taken a blanket and smothered the air. I heard footsteps in the dry grass, slow, steady, coming closer. My heart pounded in my ears. Then came a knock, one knock, not loud, not soft, just enough to make the hairs on my neck stand. My mother grabbed my wrist. "Don't move," she whispered. A second knock, this one slower, then a voice, low and deep. "Let me in." It wasn't a question. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. After a long moment, the footsteps moved away. We didn't sleep at all. In the morning, word spread that Lombe, the young man who had laughed at Baba Simu, was gone. His hut door was wide open and his bed was empty. The only thing left was a set of wet footprints leading away toward the river. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the sound of that voice. "Let me in." It didn't sound like a stranger's voice. It sounded like someone I knew. That was the worst part. By afternoon, the elders were pacing near the big fig tree. Baba Simu kept shaking his head and muttering, "Too soon, too soon." I didn't understand what he meant. I tried to stay busy, but everywhere I went, people whispered. The women at the well drew their water faster than usual. The men sharpened spears, though we all knew they would be useless if this was truly what Baba Simu said it was. That night, my mother told me to stay inside again. I nodded, but my mind was somewhere else. I couldn't stop thinking about the missing people. Nali, Caleb, Lombe, all gone without a trace except for wet footprints and objects left behind. If the man came for me, I wanted to see where he would go. So I made a plan. When the sun began to drop, I told my mother I was going to fetch more firewood before dark. She argued, but I insisted. She didn't know I had hidden a small gourd of water and a bundle of food under my bed, just in case I had to follow him far. I didn't have to wait long. As the last light drained from the sky, I felt it again, that strange heaviness in the air. My ears rang, though no one else seemed to hear it. The goats in the pen grew restless, stamping and bleating. And then he was there, standing at the far edge of the compound, watching. The red cloth on his head hung lower tonight, almost covering his empty eyes. His coat still dripped at the hem. I forced my feet to move. Slowly, I stepped toward him. When I was 10 paces away, he lifted his arm, the same slow, deliberate motion as before. I swallowed hard and took another step. He turned, no words, no warning. Just turned and walked toward the bush path that led past the river. The air grew colder with every step I took behind him. It didn't feel like night air, it felt like walking into a deep cave. The moon had risen, pale and thin, but the shadows under the trees seemed too thick, too heavy. At the riverbank, he stopped. For a moment I thought he might vanish like before, but instead he stepped straight into the water. Not at the shallow bend, not where the crossing was safe, right into the deepest part. I hesitated. The water there was black and silent. No ripples, no frogs, no movement at all. But as he walked, the water didn't splash, it just slid aside like it was parting for him. I followed. The cold hit me like a slap, and the current tugged hard at my legs. I almost fell, but then I realized something. I wasn't sinking. My feet touched solid ground, even though the water should have been over my head. We crossed to the other side. On that bank, the forest was different. The trees were taller, their branches twisted like claws. No insect sang, no wind moved. The man walked ahead, coat brushing the ground. And then I saw them. Nali, Caleb, Lombe. They were standing in a line among the trees. Same clothes as the day they vanished, same blank faces. Eyes wide and staring straight ahead. None of them moved, none of them blinked. I took a step back. That's when I heard the voice, the same low, deep voice from outside my hut. Now you belong here. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It wasn't fear holding me. It was something heavier, like the air itself had thickened around me. The man in the red cloth turned to face me. Up close, I could see his skin was cracked, like dried river mud. The cracks weren't empty, though. They were dark inside, as if water still hid beneath. His eyes, or the shadows where his eyes should have been, fixed on me. You crossed the river, he said, though his lips barely moved. Now you will stay. I tried to speak, to tell him I didn't want to stay, that I wanted to go home. But when I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. Only cold air poured out. He lifted his hand slowly, and Nali stepped forward. She moved stiffly, like she was being pulled by strings. She stopped in front of me, her face close enough that I could see the thin film covering her eyes. You follow him, she said, in a voice that was not hers. You follow until you become him. Behind her, I saw movement in the trees. Shapes began to appear, more people, dozens of them. Some I recognized from old stories the elders told, people who had vanished decades ago. All of them had the same blank stare. The man began to walk again, deeper into the forest, and they followed, one by one. I felt myself stepping forward too, even though I didn't want to. The air around me seemed to pull me along. Then, a sound, a drum. Faint at first, then louder. It came from behind me, across the river, a low, steady rhythm. I knew that drum beat. It was the one the elders used in protection rituals. The Sundown Man stopped. His head tilted slightly like he was listening. Then he turned back toward me. You can go, he said, for now. Just like that, the heaviness in my legs vanished. My body was mine again. I didn't wait. I turned and ran toward the river. The water, which had been still before, now roared like a storm. I plunged in, fighting the current, my chest burning. When I crawled onto the far bank, the drumbeat stopped. The forest behind me was silent again. The village was awake when I staggered in. My mother grabbed me, crying into my shoulder. The elders listened as I told them what I saw. When I finished, Baba Simu nodded slowly. You are lucky, he said. The Sundown Man does not always let people go, but now you must carry his mark. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He just pointed to my feet. I looked down. My toes were wet, dripping. Even though I had crossed the river hours ago, even though the night air was dry, water still fell from them, drop after drop after drop. I left the village 2 days later. I don't tell people where I'm from. I don't tell them why I never go out at sundown. But sometimes I wake up to the sound of water dripping on the floor, and once, just once, I looked out the window and saw him standing at the edge of the maize field. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more chilling African folktales and real-life legends, subscribe to Whispered Heroes. Every week, we bring you the stories the elders only tell in hushed voices. Tales of mystery, history, and the unexplained from across Africa. Subscribe now and keep the fire burning for the next story.